Happiness is beautiful, it's a kind reality. Happiness is the highest good, happiness is free. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.
Welcome to the Happiness Show. This is George Ortega, and I'm here to talk about happiness because happiness is, always has been, and always will be the point of it all. Okay, tonight we're doing our fourth Ways of Becoming Happier show, and what I want to do is I want to go back to a topic that we were talking about in the last show, the idea of meditating as a way to become happier. Basically, last segment we went through two kinds of meditation, transcendental meditation and mindfulness. And I just wanted to, before going on to other strategies, just give more of an explanation of why meditation is very important. Let me start with an explanation of happiness is really a manifestation of pleasure. It's really the end result of pleasure. Basically, we experience emotions, and of course happiness is an emotion, and then we experience the mood of happiness from the emotions, and then ultimately we experience the state of happiness. And the idea is that, well, Freud and others developed this concept called the pleasure principle, in that all of, basically everything we do, every thought we have, every feeling we have is really motivated to either seek pleasure or to avoid pain. And according to Freud's formulation, pain generally is understood to result from tension, various tensions that arise from conflicts in the mind and conflicts that come about from our negotiating ourselves in the environment. So the idea is that one of the, I think, essentials of becoming happier is to basically try to minimize that tension, because we feel a lot of anxiety. Martin Seligman, in his book What You Can and What You Can't Change, notes that at any given time in our world about 25% of us are depressed, and anxiety is a very, very integral component in depression. It's one of the symptoms that's very prevalent there, and generally our society is very very stressed, very tense in a lot of ways. There are a lot of sleeping pill medications and tranquilizers and all. So the idea is that lowering our stress level is very, very useful to helping us to become happier, because it minimizes the pain of that, and that's what these meditations do. Transcendental meditation, again, has been studied exhaustively, extensively since the 60s. There are over 500 studies on it, and it clearly, with TM, you actually reach a deeper state of relaxation than the deepest state you reach in sleep, as I mentioned last show. And mindfulness meditation, where you're just evaluating, where you're trying not to judge your thoughts, you're just perceiving them and simply being an observer to your thoughts and feelings, that does the same thing. So again, that's really why my meditation is a very, very powerful technique for helping us to become happier. It really does allow us to reduce our overall level of tension, and that makes becoming happier much, much easier. Okay, let's see. Another thing we should do is we should tell ourselves, I'm very happy, I feel very good. That reinforces it. A lot of times, we're feeling these feelings, but a lot of times, in order to really focus on the feeling and to appreciate it and to have it really amplify as much as possible, it's good to say it. Generally we would say it to ourselves. If we're really having a good time with other people, listening to music, whatever we're doing, driving in a car, it's good to just note that, to say to ourselves, hey, I feel great, and say it often, because that's a wonderful thought. You have to remember, through our days, we're just going from one thought to the next. and most of these thoughts come automatically, but we can take conscious control of what thoughts we have. And when we choose to just have our thoughts be, I feel great, or I feel very happy, that really does help to intensify the feeling and gets us also in touch with the idea that regardless of what we're doing, aside from what has to be done, like for example with work and all, our real purpose is to feel as happy as possible. Okay, another thing we should do, I think, is we should talk about happiness. We talk about sports, we talk about the environment, we talk about politics, so many things we talk about during our days, and it's kind of an irony, and it's kind of baffling that we really don't talk about happiness, because again, happiness is really our main purpose. But see, what happens is if we begin to really talk to our friends and our significant other about our happiness, how we're doing, how we're doing that day, how we've been doing throughout the week, what makes us happy, what tends to diminish our happiness. When we take the effort to really have that be a part of our conversation, that also focuses us. It really has us pay attention to our happiness, because a lot of being happy really is devoting as much attention to this task as we would devote to our work or to the different hobbies that we have. Sometimes beginning to talk about one's happiness might be a bit difficult. You have to remember, as mentioned in previous shows, the average level of happiness in the United States is about 69 out of 100. And so that's not very happy. So what happens is, like, you might find that if you begin to talk about your happiness, you might find that actually, kind of makes you more in touch with your level of unhappiness, with aspect of you that is not as happy as you would like to be. But the idea is that that kind of experience of just being in touch with the unhappiness, you get accustomed to very easily, and because what happens is then you begin to concentrate really on what it takes to become very happy, what's limiting the happiness. It really focuses you and allows you to really understand what happiness is all about, and the more you understand it, the better you can strive for it and ultimately reach very, very great happiness. And again, also with conversation, so many times in life we find that talking with someone about whatever we're talking about clarifies the situation. It helps us to understand it better. That's why therapy is so incredibly effective for so many kinds of situations that we find ourselves in. As a matter of fact, there were some experiments back in the 60s that demonstrated that therapy given by people who have never been trained to be therapists, lay people like any one of us, is generally as effective as therapy given by trained professionals. So really, talking about happiness is very, very effective in focusing us and in helping us to understand what it takes to become happier. Okay, let's see. We should try to limit the amount of TV and news and and violence we get from the media, and sex also. A lot of times, like for example, with TV in general, the studies pretty much demonstrate that after a certain time, we'll tend to feel depressed after watching too much TV. Generally, they've found in study after study that when people watch a lot of TV, they'll actually feel worse after the experience than before. So it's very important, and like with watching news, that can really impinge upon one's happiness, because the newscasters tend to just dwell on negativity, on what's wrong with the world. There's not much emphasis on what's going right. Basically, what's generally considered newsworthy is what's a problem in the world, globally, what's a problem in our country or in the city, or news really that's actually part of their strategy. They find when people are experiencing fear, apprehension about something, whether it's the economy or the war or something, then they'll tune in a lot more. And so yeah, the news just is filled with a lot of negativity that's going to impinge on one's happiness. If sometimes it's better to get one's news from print. A lot of times the print news is not as sensational, and you can turn it on and off as you wish. You don't have to sit there through half an hour of it, kind of captivated by a lot of negativity. Violence also. There's a lot of violence in the media, and that impinges on happiness. I mean, what happens is when we become violent, when we feel hostile, that comes between us and other people. And violence has been studied extensively with regard to violent programming like cartoons and children. For, I would say, at least 40 years, many studies have demonstrated that when children watch violent images in cartoons and on TV, they will express that violence to themselves, to each other. And again, when one is feeling violent or hostile, that's going to prevent the positive feelings that basically one would want to access and experience to feel as happy as possible. Okay, before we go on, what I want to do is I want to do a song I wrote, and it's again another pretty progressive song, and it's called Everything. Okay.
Everything is coming to a place of mind-enhanced reality. Perfection coming into view, the earth evolving into fantasy. A world of constant revelation, a virtually complete creation, the ever dreamed of destination, everybody's every dream come true. Everything is coming to a time of perfect love and harmony. Elevated understanding of everything we think and say and see. A total cosmic coronation, a planetary innovation, a paradise proliferation, mind's complete reality come through. Anticipation, a universal graduation, an everlasting jubilation, everything made perfect just for you. Okay.
Okay, let's see. Okay, the next thing we should try to do, I mentioned this as part of our last show on how happiness is dependent on our thoughts, is the idea that we should really try to get ourselves to believe that everything happens for the best. I mean, that's a philosophy that most of us are probably aware of. We've heard it. And some of us, really live it. Others of us maybe have heard it, but really have never tried it out. Okay, the idea with this is that, I mean, in reality, you can't prove that everything happens for the best. You can't prove that it doesn't. Just like, for example, you can't prove that there's a heaven or there isn't. But what happens is when we hold beliefs like this, like everything happens for the best, it makes everything better. You know, our minds are very susceptible to influence from the outside world, influence from the media, and also influence from what we tell it, you know, what we consciously tell it. So when we tell ourselves, you know, really, as much as possible, as much as necessary, that whatever happens is for the best, then we're basically freed from one of the the most unpleasant emotions that, you know, of the 5 unpleasant emotions we have, fear. You know, a lot of times, you know, fear is very related to anxiety. You know, we go about sometimes fearing the future, fearing what might happen if certain situations happen. And, you know, when we think that, when we believe that everything happens for the best, then we don't any longer have a reason to feel fear about anything in the future, because that fear will be replaced with faith and hope, especially faith that things will actually become better. And then sometimes, you know, what will happen is things will maybe not go the way we would like, and that will tend to impinge upon our level of happiness or experience of happiness. And we can use this philosophy of everything happening for the best to minimize whatever happens, and sometimes even to just make what happened, to really see the benefit of it. There's actually a philosophy that I think came about, I heard about it years ago, that you try to make situations into win-win situations. You know, you just don't accept the negativity of a situation. You're focused on seeing the benefits, the advantages, and the opportunities of whatever happens. So again, if you know, we do have a choice of how to view the world, how to see it in terms of our philosophy of life, and when we choose to believe, to really, you know, and again, when these beliefs really are, they're like habits. We can, like, first, if we want to try this, we would have to pretty much be conscious of an effort to do this. We would have to, like, you know, be on top of situations and remember to say to ourselves, everything happens for the best, and to really believe it. And what happens, though, is after we've done that for a while, it becomes automatic. It becomes habits. So after a while, we won't have to think about it. So yeah, that is really a great strategy for maintaining one's level of happiness and really increasing it. Okay. Okay, I want to get back to the issue of anxiety again. You know, as I mentioned before, according to Freud's and other theories of motivation, what motivates us, you know, we're basically pleasure seekers. We seek pleasure, and any time that we don't seek pleasure, it's because we recognize that there's a danger in seeking that pleasure. In other words, there's what Freud called the reality principle that, you know, pretty much mediates the pleasure principle, and it, you know, it basically tells us that, well, this something might feel pleasant in the present, but in the long term, it might not be in our best interest. But again, with the idea of anxiety, when we're thinking about the pain, what comes between us and great happiness, to a great extent, it is anxiety. And I mentioned, you know, the 2, I think, very powerful ways of alleviating anxiety through meditation, but there are many other ways. There are, like, relaxation techniques, deep breathing, imagery, guided imagery, hypnosis, you know, listening to very relaxing music. Psychologists do studies on ways to evoke different kinds of emotional experiences in people, and they found that all of these kinds of things work. Self-statements, telling oneself that one's very relaxed, will help to relax one. And again, overcoming anxiety is very important, because you know, I mean, just you know, imagine times that you're feeling pretty nervous about something, nervous about a job, nervous about meeting people, about something you're not familiar with. It's pretty hard to feel happy when you're feeling that tension in the body. It constricts the muscles, and it really distracts one from from being able to experience pleasure and happiness. So, and again, you know, I think anxiety is pretty much, I think it's considered pretty much our primal emotion, you know, our primal pain. I mean, it's, you know, being born, that's like a traumatic experience, and I think, you know, it's anxiety. So it's really the root of our displeasure to a great extent. And so we should, you know, of course, you know, overcome it as much as we can. Okay, I think something that is very good to do. A lot of times we're living in a very competitive society. We learn to compete in school for grades, and then we compete for money, and we compete for, in the case of men, women, and you know, there's a lot that we compete over. You know, success, athletics, and a lot of times, you know, a lot of times we'll find ourselves on top, but a lot of times we won't. A lot of times we'll find that other people have things that we don't, or have abilities that we don't. You know. They might have more money and all than we do. And the idea here is that it doesn't make sense to be envious of people who have more than us. It doesn't make sense to compare ourselves in that way. What happens is a lot of times we tend to compare ourselves upwards, you know, to people who have more, and we envy them. And that naturally causes us to feel less good about ourselves. And as mentioned in previous shows, self-esteem is very important to happiness. It's one of the 4 personality traits that's most correlated with happiness. And when we're, you know, feeling not as good as someone else because they have more, that's going to impinge upon our self-esteem. Now, another reason why it's just not, it doesn't make sense to envy is because really the purpose, our goal in life is happiness. It's pleasure, you know, in the moment, and happiness in the long term. You know, that's the kind of state we want to experience. And so, as long as we're happy, there's really nothing that we need envy. There are a lot of people who are more successful than we are, richer, just have different qualities. But if they're not as happy as we are, then they're really, you know, well, there's no reason to envy them. I mean, the thing is that, you know, that's happiness really, it's the great equalizer. I think the one thing maybe, I suppose, if we have a habit of envying others or a tendency, then I think the only rational thing that we would envy is someone else's greater happiness. Because, again, nothing else matters. And the science, the studies have demonstrated that intelligence, success, attractiveness, money, so many different things that we value and that we, you know, have differences between us. Some of us have more and some of us have less. These things just don't matter to happiness. We can be very happy regardless of what we have regarding any of those items, and so again, you know, it just doesn't make sense to envy anyone for anything, again, except perhaps happiness. And you know, if you take the time to work on your happiness, if you begin to understand it and work on improving it, in like 6 months, I would guess 6 months to a year, you'd probably be happy enough to not really, you know, need to envy anyone for anything. Okay, let's see. The last show I went over the 4 components of happiness. The 2 of them being hedonic, related to pleasure, experiencing positive emotions and not experiencing negative emotions, and then the 2 related to satisfaction. One being satisfied with the various domains of our life, like our work life and our leisure, you know, level of freedom, etc. And then the last component is being satisfied with life in general, global satisfaction. And satisfaction is, you know, again, it's very, very important to happiness. And it's something that, like many of the ways we perceive the world is really, to a great extent, habitual. In other words, some of us are very naturally inclined to be very satisfied with situations. Some of us are just not demanding. Things are good enough, whether it's food or entertainment or the people we're with. And you know, generally a lot of those people we'll notice are very happy, because if we're satisfied with very little, it's very easy to be very happy. But then for those of us who haven't been blessed either by genes or by experience and learning to be satisfied so easily, you know, that doesn't have to stop us from learning to become much more happy and satisfied. Again, with happiness, happiness is really a series of skills that we can acquire and improve on, like anything. It's like, you know, it's like playing golf or playing piano or something. It's we work on it, we get better, and the same goes for satisfaction. We should really try to appreciate everything. We can, you know, a lot of times our tastes are cultivated. They're acquired. For example, with food, sometimes we'll taste a food and it might, you know, not taste great, and we'll get to know it more and develop a liking for it, and that happens with a lot in life. We can apply that principle to music, to just the people we're with, to ourselves. You know, just so satisfaction is really very, very central to our happiness. And we should try to work on it as much as possible, and really enjoy working on it. With all this kind of stuff that we do, it's important to really to work on it in a way that it's like a hobby. It's something we really enjoy and don't feel that it's like an obligation. Okay, well, that's all we have time for tonight. Thanks for watching. In the future, we'll explore other topics designed to help us better enjoy life. This is George Ortega saying be good, think well, feel very happy, and I hope you'll join me again next week here on The Happiness Show.
Happiness is powerful, it's our underlying need. Happiness is why we live each day. Happiness is destiny, so let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.